Good evening, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for June 19, 2012. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Marshall.
Here.
Chair Mishra.
Here.
Vice Chair Biasotti.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Peterson.
Here.
Commissioner Samut.
Here.
Commissioner Chase called. He's going to be running a little bit late today. He'll probably be in here about 7:20 to 7:30.
Thanks, Aaron. Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Samut, would you lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of minutes, April 17.
I move the minutes be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Meeting minutes have been approved. Communications?
Yes, two things. The first is the standard at sanbruno.ca.gov. The agenda packet, which includes the agenda and staff reports, is available. Just go to the community development section. You could download the PDF there. Second thing is the Planning Commission received an email from a citizen about concerns over drinking in the downtown area in the AM hours, and the potential for fights and other nuisance type activities to happen down there. And they were talking about the parking lot that's in back of Big Joe's and the parking lots that's in back of 40's Bar. Now, this isn't typically something that comes up to the Planning Commission. However, the citizen did forward it to the Planning Commission with a CC to the police chief. Now, obviously, public drinking and public nuisance issues are primarily a police issue. Chief Telford did respond to this citizen's complaint, and they have responded. They responded in writing saying what steps have been taken, and also have had extra patrols and go out there and take a look to see if there are those type of nuisance activities happening. Where this could come up to the Planning Commission, I think this is better something for the police to handle at this point. The law allows, there's two bars downtown fall into two categories. The first category is that they're grandfathered in and they did not go through a use permit process. So 40's, for instance, is within this ballpark, and they have to live up to certain performance standards in order to keep this non-conforming grandfather status. If the police chief deems that they're no longer meeting these performance standards, a hearing would be set and they would come back to you for a decision of whether or not they're meeting these performance standards. In this case, we don't even know if the complaints are driven by bar patrons, so it's not something that would be up to the Planning Commission's level. But I'll keep you informed. The first step was responding, and you have that response from the police chief in front of you.
Thanks, Aaron. We'll open up public comment for any items that are not on the agenda. Public comment is now open and closed. Moving on to announcement of conflict of interest. Any commissioners have any conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. Agenda item number 5A, which is at 3850 Madea Way. It is a request for a use permit to allow an addition which increases the gross floor area by 50%, 61%, and would exceed 2,800 square feet of living area with a two-car garage per sections 12-230B1 and 12-280A3 of the San Bruno Municipal Code. Staff report, please.
Thank you and good evening. The project is a single-family addition in the Pacific Heights neighborhood. The existing house is 2 stories with an attached garage. The applicant is proposing an addition straight back on both floors of the existing home. The lot size is quite large at 8,389 square feet. The proposed floor area is 3,366 square feet, which results in a 0.51 floor area ratio. The project requires a use permit because it exceeds the 50% expansion threshold, and also proposes over 2,800 square feet of living space with a 2-car garage. It does comply with all the other development standards of the municipal code. In terms of design, staff finds that the project is consistent with the design guidelines. The existing house, as well as the surrounding neighborhood, consists mainly of houses that have a very simple building form. So kind of a simple structure, mostly with gable roofs that run parallel to the street and not very steep pitch roofs. This project complements that by maintaining the front elevation of the house. It also maintains the existing height of only 18 feet and also maintains that basic massing by having the project go straight back to the rear. All of the exterior materials would match the existing. The applicant has also indicated that they wish to reuse some of the existing windows for cost savings as well as green building measures. And so staff would suggest that we allow them a little bit of flexibility in seeing what windows would still be usable based on some of that feedback we received at the Architectural Review Committee about windows. Staff sent a courtesy notice on March 30th, and we did receive one phone call. A neighbor was concerned that the project was too big and could block her view. However, she declined to meet with staff. We asked if she would like to meet to review the plans and see if we could mitigate any of her concerns. She indicated that she wasn't able to do that, but did want her concerns reflected into the record. After mailing the legal notice, we received another phone call from a different neighbor. However, she really just needed a clarification on the plans in terms of how the plans were read. And so I walked through that with her, and she said that she understands the project and does not oppose the project. Staff has applied the standard conditions of approval to the project, but I would like to point out one unique condition, and that's number 10. The lower level of this house has quite a bit of storage area, and that storage area is included in the floor area calculation as prescribed in the municipal code, so the portions that have the ceiling height are included in the FAR. So if the owners elect to finish this area in the future, they will need a building permit to do so. So condition of approval number 10 addresses that possible future condition. So staff would recommend approval of the project with the conditions in the staff report, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Lauren. Are there any questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
Just in regard to the comment that you got from the citizen, I see the floor area ratio that's proposed is 5.51, and the zoning requirements allow up to 0.55. So this falls well below that threshold. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So it even though she may think it's a little bit large, technically it does fit the zoning requirements.
It's within the development standards, correct?
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
With that condition 10 that you included, shouldn't we maybe have an asterisk on gross floor area? You know, so if in the future someone's just reading the chart and doesn't read all the conditions, they can see that the gross floor area is really not 3366. Isn't that what you were kind of explaining? That it's not really 3366?
It is in terms of a technical interpretation of the code. They intend to use it as storage area, but because it has the ceiling height of 7 feet 6 inches, it is included in the floor area calculation.
And how much roughly is the storage area? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would be happy to calculate it, and I don't know if you'd like to hear from the
I was just
applicant.
thinking if we put like an asterisk there saying that, you know, 700 square feet, I mean, just saying, pick a number, 700 square feet divided as storage area, just for future reference if we ever have to fall back on it for comparison purposes.
Okay, so the director just said that it's about 800 square feet, and we'd be happy to amend that condition so it provides clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Thanks. Is the applicant present? Could you take the podium, state your name and your street address, and tell us about your project?
My name is Bob Bowles. I'm with Beausoleil Architects of San Francisco, 745 Faxon Avenue, San Francisco. My client, Bob Rebus, is there. If you want to raise your hand, he's happy to talk also. I was trying to figure out exactly what the area of that storeroom is, or I should say the storage space that counts as potential habitable space. It's about 440 square feet. So all of the living space is on the second floor where all of the living space is now. The reason we have this big crawl space is simply because of the topography of the land and the shape of the existing building. Because we have that space, it'll be enclosed. The owners intend to use it for storage and/or for play space for their kids or whatever. It won't be heated space. It's got a high enough ceiling that potentially sometime in the future they might want to fix it up, but they don't have any definite plans to do that now. So it's just there because it's there. If the land wasn't shaped that way, they wouldn't have had that and didn't really want it. So the owners wanted a very simple, straightforward project. And that's the nature of the house. So I think the design reflects that. We do intend to make it as green as we can within economic reason. We plan to put pre-plummet for solar water heating and put in conduit for future photovoltaics and reuse as many windows as we can. Put in the minimal, more than the minimal amount of insulation and so forth. But basically, it's just a very simple addition to the house that will help them with their family. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Any questions for the applicant? I actually have a couple of them. My questions come from the fact that I own a house with the same floor plan, which is in the middle of construction. So, two issues that I see that you will have to deal with, and it may cause you to come back to an ARC review meeting. One of them is the roof, the dual roof you have in the back. This is a pre-truss, a truss roof, and therefore there are no load-bearing walls interior. They're all exterior walls that are carrying the weight, and you are removing a portion of that exterior wall, which would need to be hung off, and the new roofs will have to be installed. What was your reasoning behind putting two smaller pitched roofs in the back, as opposed to tearing that roof apart completely and redesigning it?
Well, tearing off the entire roof, including the existing house, we didn't think that was something we wanted to spend the money on. The reason for the dual roof is we just liked the looks of it, and it kept the profile very low. But I think we can put a beam across the back where we're taking out the wall that'll support the old trusses and the new roof both without affecting the structural strength of the trusses.
Yep, and you'll have to do that. The beam is the only thing that's going to hold it up. The second issue I have is that retaining wall. It's not really an issue, it's just a concern that I have for you. The retaining wall, that it's between the storage room and the crawl space. There's a wall that exists there already, or they're basically posts right now. Are you planning on building that into a retaining wall, or what's the intent
This
there?
is in the existing part of the house?
In the existing part of the house. What's the intent there?
There's a 2-foot-high stem wall with posts on top of that that are about 5.5 or 6 feet tall. So that area we're not doing anything with. It's existing to remain as is.
Okay. The issue that I had with my project is that water seeps over that and gets into the house. So you may have to employ some mitigative measures while you're digging on the backside in order to drain that water. And that's a caution for you for extra design.
Thanks.
Just
the owners have some of that problem now. They have a sump and a sump pump in the front, but we hope to have some of that fixed during construction.
Okay. As you implement your green features, that might be something that you can tap into, is you reusing that water supply. Just pointing it out there. That's what I'm doing.
Great.
Are there any questions? Any other questions? You can take a seat. Are there any members of the public that have comments on this project? Seeing none, public comment is open and closed. City staff
Through the chair.
Yes.
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
I move the Planning Commission approve use permit 12-3 based on finding of fact 1 through 7, subject to conditions of approval 1 through 25.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. There's no more discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Seeing none. The item is approved, and there's a 10-day appeal period?
Correct.
Great. Agenda item 5B. This is a request for a use permit to allow an addition which increases the gross floor area by 50% and a minor modification to include a 8-foot street side setback where 10 feet is required per sections 12-230B1 and 12-12010A of the San Bruno Municipal Code. Staff report, please.
Thank you and good evening. As stated, the applicant has applied for a use permit and minor modification to add on to an existing single-family dwelling. The site itself is located on the northeast corner of Acacia Avenue, Santa Lucia Avenue, and is currently developed with a one-story single-family dwelling consisting of 730 square feet of living area and a 345 square foot one-car garage. The applicant is proposing a first and second-story expansion. The first floor will contain one family room, a study, and one bathroom. The second floor will contain 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. In total, this would amount to a 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms and a study consisting of 1,823 square feet of living area and a one-car garage. I would like to point out that the applicant is converting a small portion of the garage into a hallway to create the required internal circulation between the existing single-family dwelling and the proposed expansion. At the May 10th Architects Review Committee, several commissioners expressed concern with the existing internal circulation and felt that the floor plan could easily be converted to a second dwelling unit. Now, the commissioners weren't primarily concerned that the current property owner would convert it, but was definitely more concerned that a future property owner may see the layout and may convert that to a second unit. Staff has added 2 conditions of approval. I'd like to point your attention to conditions of approval number 6 and number 7. Condition of approval number 6 is our standard condition that we include on all single-family homes, and it reads that the residence shall be used only as a single-family residential dwelling unit. No portion of the residence shall be rented out as a secondary residential dwelling unit. Any attempt to construct an illegal dwelling unit will result in code enforcement action by the city. And we've also included condition of approval number 7, which is a custom condition strictly for this application, and it states that a deed restriction shall be recorded against the property prior to building permit final. The deed restriction shall prohibit the conversion of any portion of the home into a separate living unit without first obtaining planning division approval. So this deed restriction will essentially warn future property owners that this it has to remain as a single-family home. And in order to convert it to a second dwelling unit, they do need planning division approval. The Architectural Review Committee also recommended that the applicant incorporate wood window trim throughout the home and include a green building statement describing the green building measures that they plan to incorporate during the construction phase of the project. The applicant has since followed up with those recommendations. The applicant also has made some very minor changes to the plan since the Architectural Review Committee meeting. Specifically, they made some minor window changes to the second floor plan, made some minor adjustments to the floor plan on the second floor as well, and increased the ceiling height from 8 feet to 9 feet. Staff did send a courtesy notice to all adjacent property owners and the required public notice to all property owners within 300 feet of the site. We did receive one email from a concerned property owner directly across the street. They were more concerned with the second floor expansion and felt that the second floor expansion could potentially block the morning sunlight that they currently enjoy. They asked staff if a shadow study would be required for this application. Staff responded and stated that a shadow study typically would not be required, given the fact that the second story expansion is meeting all setback requirements. It's less than the 28-foot height limit. It's coming in at 23 feet, and it's meeting the daylight plane requirements or criteria outlined in the residential design guidelines. Overall, staff finds that the addition is consistent with the existing single-family dwelling and the residential design guidelines. The second floor is set back from the first story below, which is a common facade articulation technique outlined in the residential design guidelines. Additionally, as previously stated, the second floor expansion will be meeting the daylight plane criteria outlined in the guidelines as well. I would like to point out that the existing single-family home does have substandard setbacks. The front setback currently measures 11 feet 7 inches, where 15 feet is required, and the street side setback varies from 5 feet to 8 feet. This is a common design feature within the neighborhood and is present on many homes within that specific neighborhood. There are a lot of substandard setbacks. As stated, the applicant is applying for a minor modification to expand the first floor directly north of the garage, and this would continue the 8-foot non-conforming setback. Staff is in support of this expansion. It is consistent with the existing single-family home and the development standards within the neighborhood. I would like to point out that the addition meets all other development standards of the zoning district. Overall, staff is supportive of the use permit and minor modification request and recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project based on findings of fact 1 through 9 and conditions of approval 1 through 25. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
Condition number 7, I mean, is it even needed? I mean, isn't that the city restriction for any house anywhere that doesn't meet the in-law criteria?
It is, but the commissioners were concerned about future property owners. If they looked at the floor plan and the way it was laid out, they felt that potentially this could be converted to a second dwelling unit. So essentially what this does is put future property owners on notice. And because it will be recorded against the property, they'll know for a fact that it can't be a second dwelling unit unless they receive planning division approval.
I think we're kind of singling out I mean, we should do this would be a good condition on every project. I mean, not just one more problem on a point of sale. I don't think it's necessary. It's in our codes, it's in our regulations, it's in our, I mean, everybody who buys a house should know that they can't rent out, use a part of their house as a secondary thing. And I think unless we have a findings of approval because of the certain layout of this house and the easy access for a second unit, I mean, I think we're just kind of, I don't like it myself. Unless we do it with everybody, I don't like it with this one. I understand why you're doing it. I'm not saying I disagree with it. I think we're being, I don't know what the word is.
Through the chair. I think the middle ground is something that you touched on, is that we haven't recommended this before, but there are certain floor plans that lend themselves to potential buyers that are saying, hey, let's set up a second unit. I see this floor plan would work well with the second unit. So I think if we do apply this condition of approval, in the future we should apply it to projects that also have similar floor plans and then incorporate that language within the findings. That way we do have some nexus and we're not just saying, this one, at a whim putting this condition on. But it is something that has to be applied consistently, and then this could be a starting point. But I do agree some type of language should be added to the findings of approval so that down the line we make sure we're consistent with other applications with similar floor plans.
Okay, yeah.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
I'd like to second Commissioner Marshall's objection to that condition of approval, because I think it could have been easily applied to lots of other applications in the past, and I think it unfairly singles out this one. The deed approval, the deed restriction aspect is what I'm objecting to. Is that what you were primarily concerned with?
I can't speak for fact, but upon transfer or sale of this house, like the way the lenders are these days, when they're looking at everything, if they see a deed restriction on here, you're going to open up a can of worms for, I'm 10 years from now, if they try to sell the house and the new lender says, why does this house have a deed restriction? I've never, I just don't want to put them in jeopardy of that. So I think some verbiage in the findings of fact could help on that. And I don't want to make it look like if they go to refinance the house that there's an issue here. You put things in deeds these days, and everything's. I don't want to make their life miserable later. I'm just trying to. I think verbiage in the findings of fact, in the findings could help out, like Aaron was saying.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
I also want to support that Commissioner Marshall's comments. I think it's really important, and it's our responsibility to look at every detail and to look at properties, and any time that I make a decision that's out of the range, it does have to have some level of hardship or some level of issues that would make that decision. And in this case, unless there's some historical issue and some background findings, I find that at this particular time to have maybe an ad hoc committee or something to take a look and to say this is something that's going to be moving forward. I think that to start off with someone and to have something on record of this sort, it does feel a bit stringent, and so I would agree. I would agree that putting it on a deed of trust, it's just another level, and I think that it doesn't feel like it's part of a planning commission decision. I believe that it requires another. I think that it requires some future discussion and at least from my point of view before it comes to making a decision of this nature.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
Yep. It's more a statement, I think, than a question, but it looks to me that the elevations for both the existing and modified or proposed are mislabeled.
Could you elaborate?
Well, for example, on page A4, the bottom elevation, which shows modified side west elevation, isn't that actually the front of the house? And then where it says modified rear, isn't that the side of the house? Right?
Technically, the west elevation is the side of the house. We define the front of the lot as the shortest street frontage there. So it's a corner lot. So on Santa Lucia Avenue, there's 40 feet of street frontage, and that would be considered the front of the lot.
So the front door is not on the front of the house?
Correct.
The garage door is not on the front of the house?
Correct.
And the
Okay.
address is in the front of the house. Because this house
So
is
the
an
address
Acacia
isn't-
address.
They do have an Acacia address, so it's 100 Acacia Avenue.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
My other comment was, if there is a concern in this particular property, is there something within the layout or within the development of this project that might need to have attention to not minimize the size so much, but ask to take a look at this to say, is there something that needs to be looked at to restructure the drawing so it doesn't have that potential of a future concern?
I'd say looking at the floor plan and the overall site plan, they are extremely limited in what they can do as far as an addition.
I see that.
They do have 2 street trees that played into the design of the proposal before us tonight. So they are limited, and they have to, the only way to really create that internal circulation is to convert a portion of the garage into a hallway space to connect the existing single-family home with the proposed addition, given site constraints. An extreme measure would be to completely relocate the location of the garage. However, that would be a huge expense, and we would lose a street tree, which the city doesn't like to do. We like to keep as many street trees as possible. So that would be the extreme case, to move the location of the garage and revise the location of the addition.
I understand that. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
This actually creates a one-car garage, pretty much, where there was a two-car garage.
It was always considered a one-car garage, given the actual dimensions of the garage itself. So it's going from a large one-car garage to a slightly smaller one-car garage.
Thank you very much.
Through the chair. There's actually, I'm going to look at this here, and it's kind of a question that came up at work today on another house. I noticed this garage, besides the garage door, has no other exits. Does a garage need a secondary exit? That's a question. I don't know if we had another house in a different whole city that an issue came up on a zoning use. in
I
South
don't
City.
believe there's anything within the building code, and there's nothing within our zoning code that would require it. I can double check with our building official, though, and get back to the planning commission, but I've never heard that requirement. I think I would have
It
come
came up
across
as
it.
it came up as a fire code issue in South City, and we're I'm actually
For
disputing-
residential?
For residential, yeah.
I'll double check on that and get back to the
And I'm
planning.
fighting it. I didn't think it, I couldn't find it anywhere, and so, but the fire department is saying that there had to be a secondary exit, if possible, if possible.
Commissioner, from what I recall, to get out of the garage if there's a fire, it's 2 motions: pull the cord, lift the door, and so that should be enough to get out of the garage door. To satisfy code. So,
I don't know,
but Aaron can check into that.
Yeah.
it's something to look into before they design a house. If the fire department is gonna require a secondary exit,
I think we'll wait till Planning Commission discussion to discuss the requirement for the deed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Could you take the podium, state your street address, and tell us a bit about your project?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for spending the time to review the project. My name is Jason Chen, the architect of the project, and he is the owner, Mr. Wong. And I think met the planning department staff pretty well explained the project, and I don't want to repeat the same thing again. I think he already explained why we putting a hallway that connect to the new addition from the existing building, because the limit of the narrow lot, and also the garage in the middle between 2 big trees, and then the curb cut. If we're relocating the garage, then we had to cut down that big tree on the sidewalk, and then we had to redo the curb cut again. So that's why we keep the old garage, and rather than go around the back of the garage to the new addition. And this is a small home, and then it's only 731 square feet. And then they have 2 grow-up kids, they need bigger house. And then after we put all this 1,000 square feet to the existing house, I think still pretty small house compared to the house in that neighborhood in general. So, I don't have anything else to say. I'm open. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
Are you satisfied, and is the owner satisfied with the conditions, including the deed
Well, we don't
restriction?
mind. There's no intention of the owner to create a secondary unit, and as I say earlier, they have 2 grow-up kids, and husband and wife, and then they want a bigger house, and then they want to stay there for a long time. And so they don't mind if the city feel comfortable to have that deed, have them decide. They don't mind to sign that deed. But I think
So
that the planning code have the title for single-family unit already. So I think this is a little bit redundant, but we don't mind to sign it if the city feel comfortable about it.
So he's very, the owner is very clear of that condition and has no concerns or issues with it.
No,
Thank you for that.
thank you.
Thank you. And take a
Thank
seat.
you.
We'll open up public comment. If there are any members of the public that would wish to speak on this, you can take the seat.
Okay, thank you.
We'll open up public comment, and no, you can actually take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. If not, public comment is open and closed. We'll bring it back to the city, to the Planning Commission for discussion. Let's address the issue of the deed. Do we want to keep it? Do we want to strike it? Are there any suggestions, or if there's nothing, then we'll...
Through the
go.
chair, I'd like to ask our planning director your thinking behind it, and not so much why it came to this, but hearing the discussion from the planning commission, what would be your your point of view on that?
If it weren't for the Architecture Review Committee's discussion at the previous meeting, we probably wouldn't have included it. I think if we do want to include it, we should include it consistently going forward and not just have this be a one-time thing. I spoke to the city attorney about this when we first drafted the conditions of approval. He said some cities do this. It's pretty, he used to work for the city of Belmont. That was something that the city of Belmont did quite often when they were concerned about the potential for a conversion. It hasn't been our practice to include this, so if the Planning Commission is comfortable not including this, and just letting our normal zoning laws take effect and our normal building code laws take effect, I think we'd be, the staff would be comfortable eliminating that condition. But if we do choose to put it in, let's do it consistently from now on.
My concern is that if we were to make this decision this evening without some discussion or some research on it, it would not, just would, at least from my point of view, doesn't feel like I would be doing my best thinking on this. So my point of view is that I'd like to eliminate it from the as a condition.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
I'd like to move that the commission approve use permit 12-5 and minor modification 12-1 based on finding of fact 1 through 9, subject to conditions of approval 1 through 25, deleting condition 7.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Motion's approved. There is a 10-day appeal period. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5C, which is at 1150 El Camino Real. It's a request for a conditional use permit to allow a farmer's market per section 1296-190C of the San Bruno Municipal Code. Staff report, please.
Thank you. The Chamber of Commerce has applied for a use permit to operate a weekly farmer's market in the parking lot at the shops at Tanforan. It's a somewhat unusual application process, so I'd like to give you some background. As you recall, Tanforan is located in a planned development zoning district, which has site-specific requirements. The exact type and location of retail uses are not really specified within that planned development. And so since this is an outdoor sales use that's not specifically permitted in those words in the PD, staff determined that a use permit or temporary use permit would be required. So the first step was bringing it forward to the City Council to confirm that the use is consistent with the overall planned development. The City Council did make this determination on April 24th, and at that time they also requested 2 conditions of approval, which I'll discuss just a little bit later. The next step in the approval process was that we staff reviewed the application as we normally would, routed it to all the reviewing departments, including engineering, fire, and the police department. Then the community development director approved a temporary use permit subject to the conditions from all of those departments, and temporary use permits by the community development director are good for up to 3 months. So the market has been operating every Sunday since May 20th under that temporary use permit. So now the project is before the commission in order to continue for the remainder of the 2012 season. So now I'd like to turn to some of the details of the market.
Through the chair, can I interrupt 1 second? I'd like to
Sure.
ask a question to staff. Since I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce and like I believe Commissioner Johnson is also, is this conflict of interest since we're members of the organization who's applicant?
Yeah.
Even though it's a nonprofit, or I just don't know. I just thought of it halfway through her conversation. I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
Whenever in doubt, I would say yes.
Okay.
I don't have the determination on that, but I mean, if you feel there is one, then you should probably not vote on it.
Okay.
Through the chair, is a conflict of interest when it has a financial gain to your personal?
There's two. I mean, there's when there's a direct financial gain, yes, then there's an obvious conflict, and then there's a conflict of interest that has to do with perception. Does the public think that there could be something that makes you vote a certain way? So that's another thing. It's just the perceived conflict of interest as well.
I think
we
just
should
for
recuse
safe, I think I'll
ourselves.
sit out. I'm going to sit out just to be, no
Well,
sense,
makes sense.
no sense risking it for the chamber.
Okay, so we'll recuse ourselves.
All right.
We'll recuse Commissioner Marshall and Commissioner Johnson from this item.
Good call.
Could we close the door behind them as well? if we should close the door.
As long as they go over and sit on the side, usually.
All right. Please continue.
Okay, so now I'll continue with some of the details about the farmers market. The hours are 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sundays. As I mentioned, it started on May 20th and is proposed to continue until November 18th. The location is in the parking lot, and you can see it in the Exhibit C to your staff report. It's basically north of the main entrance, so that main entrance that people go into that's across from the crossing. And that's generally in front of Ulta is where the farmers market is held, and it's up against the El Camino Real side. The market is approximately located on 70 parking spaces, and as you can see there in the exhibit, it covers 2 drive aisles. The market area is separated with barriers and cones from the internal driveway and from the adjacent parking area. There's also a pedestrian buffer area that separates the market area from the main drive aisle. So this creates some area for some visibility and improved pedestrian safety as people are moving from the market area to the parking or to the mall area. Also, a Pacific Coast Farmers Market staff member is on site each Sunday. They oversee the circulation and the safety aspects of it and make sure that those pedestrian and circulation measures are effective because some of them may need to be improved or updated as the market really grows and is successful at that location. It's also worthwhile to note that the market is proposed to end before the holiday shopping season. And as you know, planners and engineers evaluate peak parking in a shopping mall such as this really during the holiday season. And this market will be over before the peak shopping season begins. So we do not anticipate a parking issue that will stretch into the peak season. And I'd like to review a couple of key conditions of approval for the project. First, with condition number 10 and 11, the applicant is responsible for trash, recycling, and all of the cleanup of the site. So it's strictly their obligation to make sure that there's no trash that overflows in the mall or into the public right-of-way. Condition number 30, if there were to be any impacts on traffic or circulation in the future, the community development director or police department could require additional signage to help people in their circulation and getting around the mall and from the street. And conditions of approval number 32 and 33 were the 2 that were added by the city council that I mentioned earlier. And basically this includes a new crosswalk in front of the Barnes & Noble and a directional sign to help drivers get to the Target and the JCPenney parking structures. So that's some of the other conditions of approval are fairly standard for any kind of special event or outdoor event that would happen within the community. Since the market started operating on May 20th, we have not received any concerns or questions from any members of the public, from any residents, or from any city departments. So no issues have come up since the market started operating. So staff does recommend approval of these permits subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
First of all, I think it's a good application and a nice staff report. On page 4, however, it refers to peak mall parking requirements. It's spelled P-E-E-K. Is that the right word you were thinking of?
I do not think that that's the right word. I think it's P-E-A-K. I think my grammar's wrong, but I think
okay.
the commissioner might know better than I do.
No, I thought there was something I was missing possibly. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Condition number 30, does that require the police chief and the director approval, or is it or?
As worded in the condition, it requires both of their approval. Anytime we made a change like this, we would normally refer to both the director and the police chief to make sure it's satisfactory to both.
Okay. When you were giving your report, you said or, so just wanted to clarify. The second item I have is there's a requirement for, let me refer back, 17 and 18. First one requires a ADA parking area of at least 2 van accessible spaces. From the exhibit, it doesn't seem like there's a van accessible space, van accessible ADA space shown on the exhibit. Um, is this requirement for in the vicinity of, or is there a limit as how far this van accessible space is supposed to be?
You're correct, it's not on the site plan. After the site plan was generated, we talked with the building official about having those 2 van accessible spaces. They need to be in that immediate vicinity, so what we recommended is that they reduce the number of ADA parking spaces and stripe out the van accessible area or otherwise block it out to provide that immediately adjacent.
And I assume the same goes for the ADA bathroom and the sink. It's not shown on the plan, but it will be provided for.
That's correct.
In the vicinity of.
Correct.
The other question I had was there any consideration for this function not being located here, but right next door in the Sears portion of the parking lot, which is less dangerous for pedestrians?
There was. We did discuss it with the applicant, but I would like to defer to them to give a little bit more detail on that.
Sure. Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Is the applicant present? Just take the podium and state your name.
Kirsten Pinocchi, I'm the current president of the chamber.
Great. Could you speak to the project if you want, if you wish?
Sure. We did request to move the farmers market to the shops of Tan Fran, and we did that beginning May 20th, and we have had the farmers market open successfully every Sunday since then. We've gone through all the conditions of the permit with Pacific Coast Farmers Market, and they've adhered to all the permit requirements that we went. Each week we'd visit and we'd make sure that everything was going smoothly, and it has. And it's been well attended, and the vendors are showing up, and they're bringing their fresh products, and the residents and people of San Bruno are enjoying it.
Great. Could you address my first question, which is location?
The Sears question, I'm
Yes.
going to refer that to Tan Fran.
Great.
Good evening. My name is Linda Larson. I'm the general manager at the shops of Tan Fran and representative of ownership. Your questions?
My question was regarding location, as to whether the Sears parking lot was considered, since it has less foot traffic around, or less drivers looking in 4 different
There are a
directions.
couple of issues. Number one, we don't own that property. It's owned by Sears. So you'd have to approach Sears for that. You're welcome to. I'd be happy to on your behalf, but that wasn't what was requested of me. So put you on our lot.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any members of public who would like to speak? Public comment is now open. Please take the podium. State your name and your just the street name.
My name is Alan Moy. I'm the Assistant Director of the Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association. We are located at 5060 Commercial Circle in Concord, California. We are partners with the San Bruno Chamber of Commerce and the shops at Tan Fran Mall, and serve as the farmers market operator. Want to just take the opportunity to thank the Chamber, the shops at Tan Fran, and the City of San Bruno for your support and the staff support in giving us the temporary use permit and allowing us to open in May. The market has been successful. We have a lot of growing to do. The original application stated the potential for 50 vendors. We have been, over the past several weeks, averaging more 20 to 25. So we know that we have a lot of work to do to really create the market that's of the size and scale and quality that this community deserves, and we're working hard at that. There are two of the conditional use, two of the conditions that I just would like to ask the planning commissions if there's some opportunity for flexibility. That's number 18 and 19. Number 18 of 2 ADA restrooms. We rent portables that are delivered on site, then they are serviced on site and removed. Given the fact that we are at about half capacity currently, we were hoping for the flexibility to have only one restroom with one ADA restroom with an ADA sink available until the market reached the size where there was the demand for a second. That would give us the savings of several $100s a week that we could invest into additional marketing for the farmers market. Secondly, number 19, in terms of the placement of the fire extinguishers, it makes the statement of mounted to a fixed location. As everything that we do is temporary, we put up temporary tents for the day. We would prefer not to affix something to Tan Fran property. They would probably prefer that also. There would also be no way for us to guarantee security since we are only there for 7 hours per week. So we would hope for some flexibility to perhaps have those in a visible location. We set up a farmers market information booth each week. It is our practice that that is where the market manager stores his or her equipment, and that we could have a fire extinguisher available there and visible. And if there was perhaps another place within the market that you felt appropriate, it's just simply the terminology of a fixed location is concerning to us because we were unclear as to how we could effectively implement that on a regular basis. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
I'd like to ask staff, what do you think the fire department was looking for? It looks to me like they're just looking for 3 fire extinguishers around the area in a position that can't readily be changed unless it's purposefully done. Is this something that can be worked out behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think the term fixed doesn't mean affixed to the ground. Like what I think it means is a consistent location that people know where they're at every single time they're at the market and won't have to search for them if a fire does break out. So what we could do, both 18 and 19 are things that are really at the building official decides the ADA issues and implements ADA, and the fire marshal implements the fire provisions. I think something that we could do there is add, say, ADA restrooms shall be present on site to the satisfaction of the building official. And then on the affixed poles, just say to the satisfaction of the fire marshal. That way we could work it out, and I do think that could be reasonable. If there's less booths, then there's a less demand for bathrooms, and that's something that we could work out with the building official.
Okay.
But that's something for the building official to determine.
Thank you very much. Let me ask the representative, does that sound something that would work for you?
Yes, that would give us
Thank you.
flexibility. That would also, the restroom requirement is something that's required of health codes. That also gives us the flexibility if there should be a change in the enforcement by the health department. It also gives us the flexibility to be responsive to them, which we appreciate.
Very good.
We have an appointment with the fire department for 10 a.m. on Thursday, so we can work with them in terms of the definition of the fire extinguishers at that time.
I think as a practical matter, they're looking for something that the extinguisher can't be just run off with or knocked over easily, and also something that's visible to the people who may want to use it.
Yeah, we appreciate it when our fire extinguishers don't walk away from the market also.
It can happen.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Do you have any other comments? No comment? All right, thank you. There are no more comments. Public comment is now closed. Yes. Could you take the...
Thank you for letting me speak. I have a couple of questions. Not being the applicant, I have not received the full, all the restrictions and conditions that are put. I've never seen the document. I'm a little alarmed that this evening I'm hearing that number 30 says that if future impacts arise on traffic, the planning director and the police chief may impose additional signage. That's something I should be aware of and be able to assess and discuss with ownership before it is enacted. There are other restrictions or demands that are being put on the shopping center that I need to discuss as well. I believe that there's a demand for directional wayfinding traffic for the J.C. Penney and Target garage structure on the other side of the property. I also believe that there is a demand for a crosswalk at the Barnes & Noble location across to the main entrance. These are large and impactful requests of the property owner. Not having been an applicant, I haven't had the benefit of reading the documents. I haven't been fully apprised of the demands made on ownership, and I need to know them before I can be allowed to let you proceed. I also think I have the right to make some statements as it relates to our desire to have the restrictions on signage and the demand for the crosswalk to be removed.
It's not a portion for public comment, so I'm going to just close public comment for a second, and we'll come back.
And then we can come back to that?
Mhm.
Thank you kindly.
There are no more public comments, then that portion of the meeting is done.
Through the
And
chair,
let's come back for discussion.
I'd like to ask the Tanforan representative to come to the podium and explain those concerns again and what might be a practical solution.
I'm relatively new to the property. I've been here a year and a half. I've had the fortune of working with there on a number of issues and opening the doors to public relations and working with the community, which is something I find very dear to my heart. I'm a former planning commissioner, former chair. Thank you for your service. I know it's difficult. Been there, done that. I'm a former mayor, two-term council member of the city of Millbrae. I've been in shopping center management for 30 years. The Chamber of Commerce is sometimes considered a competitor or an adversary with a shopping center, when it couldn't be less true. We promote business activities. My marketing director's on the board. We want San Bruno to be successful. And when San Bruno knocks on our door, which is what happened in this situation, we opened it. Well, when we opened it, we let a few things fly in with the friendly, let's help you out presentation that the chamber brought to us. They needed the visibility of our property for the farmers market. No problem. We're thrilled to be hosting it. It's a wonderful community program. Doesn't hurt us a bit. It's on sleepy Sunday mornings. There are no issues. It's a non-issue. It's a joy. Well, before 2009, I believe it was, there were some previous discussions with ownership and the city relative to peak EAK traffic periods and parking ratios relative to the planned development project. I understand these discussions are still ongoing, and some of the issues are yet to be resolved. One of those issues is the wayfinding signage that's being required by the city or imposed upon the ownership. Totally unrelated to the farmers market. It's an issue 9 years old relative to a separate discussion, which is still ongoing and is in the process of moving forward. That argument should stay with that argument. I don't have the authority to spend money on signage. And I don't know if that's an appropriate request because it's crossing over issues. It's a hangover issue, I guess is the way to put it. As it relates to the crosswalk, I need to go back into my recollections of how this property was developed. It was a planned development. The city was intimately involved in the development of this facility. We're partners. We are symbiotic, and we benefit from each other. This property was designed, developed, approved, constructed, and inspected by every single aspect and department of the city of San Bruno. We've complied with the safety regulations, the ADA regulations. Everything required of that facility was performed to the satisfaction of the city of San Bruno. So to just say, oh, by the way, let's put a crosswalk over there. You are veteran planning directors. You know that you can't just place a crosswalk without understanding its impacts, its costs, how it can be negative to traffic. I mean, there are a plethora of issues that aren't being addressed, and there's just this demand. I can tell you, I went out and had it assessed for cost and feasibility, and if you've been to that intersection, it's not only catawampus from the direct crossroad, but it goes from a sidewalk that would require a truncated dome and ramp set in to an existing concrete curb that is not ADA accessible, and it would require sloping back 16 feet on either side on the ultra side and the front entrance side so that you could ramp directly and properly and conforms with ADA to the truncated dome ramp. Then you cross the street, and the stop sign that is there, the stop bar, would have to be moved back about 4 feet because it's too close to the actual exit road itself, and we'd have to make an adjustment for the path of travel. The path of travel would go into a curbed planter that's rather large, has not only a hydrant, but a PG&E vault, stop signs, sprinklers. I'd have to completely renovate that. I'd have to dig it out, put in ramps, put in a pathway that I'm having difficulty understanding could potentially be non-compliant. I don't know if there's a way to actually make that walkway through that planter ADA compliant. It might require an ADA variance. It's not as simple as striping the pavement. It's at least a $10,000 project, all said and done. You're asking a great deal of the host you knocked on the door of to let you in. And I am at a loss for how to assist you in this regard.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
So I asked you if you had any possible resolutions to this issue that might permit this application to go forward tonight.
Well, I have to state that status quo, again, has been sincerely, formally, and long-term vetted by the city and its various departments, safety departments, police department, planning department, building department, city council, planning commission. This is a project. This is your project. This is the project that the city of San Bruno put in place, and it has been in place successfully for a number of years. People cross at this location and hundreds of other locations at the shopping center and have for years without a crosswalk.
So what you're saying is that your proposed resolution is to at least temporarily, if not permanently, put the signage and crosswalk provisions aside so that this can go forward at least for now. And then if the city finds it to be of such importance that it has to come back, it can always be brought back.
I have no problem with that, but in the meantime, I'll be putting my ducks in a row as well, because it's also a possibility we could lose a parking stall. I mean, you have to come look at the location, Aaron. We could lose a parking stall. If we lose a parking stall, we're further down the road to negativity on the parking ratio issue. We can't let a stall go, because that has monetary value, not far and beyond the cost of a crosswalk, ADA or otherwise. I would greatly appreciate the greater picture being here, being the Chamber of Commerce and the City of San Bruno, and what they're trying to do with a community event for their citizens, and they need a parking lot, and we have one. It's that simple. If we can go with the flow on that, see how it develops, see if it grows to 50. If you guys want to move it over to Sears, I'll go to Sears myself on your behalf and make a case. And I'll be happy to start that process now. But we don't own that property, so given the time constraints we had, we put you on ours.
Yeah, they're not going to make any quick decisions. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other city or commission discussions?
I think those are very valid, excuse me, comments, and I appreciate them very much. Certainly, we want to see it, or at least I would like to see it go forward, and understanding, you know, the implications that could be brought forth, you know, these two items, I fully understand versus coming from and appreciate it. So those are my further comments until we have a vote.
Before we have a resolution, Aaron, do you have any comments to add on 32 and 33?
Sure. As the general manager pointed out, there's a backstory to this, especially related to the directional signage. And the first thing I like to note is that both of these conditions were placed as a direction of the city council when we had that initial meeting. I'll first touch on the directional signage. Since 2007, the Tan Fran Shopping Center has been operating without the required number of spaces. Several years ago, and this is because of ADA improvements that they had to make to the target level garage, that knocked out about 200 parking spaces or so. So it took them down from, they're required to have 4.5 spaces per 1,000. It took them down to a ratio of about 4.3. They started to go through a parking amendment process several years ago. It actually went to the Planning Commission and then was scheduled for the City Council. The direction at both the Planning Commission and the City Council meeting was fine with the lower parking requirement. However, there are highly impacted areas within Tanforan Mall, and we'd like to see some directional signage to get people to the areas of the mall that have vacant parking spaces. And obviously, if anyone's been to the mall, the most highly impacted are the area outside of BJ's and the area outside of Ulta. And the least impacted areas are the JCPenney's parking deck and the Target garage. Now, I think the City Council and the Planning Commission at that time, this was years ago before a lot of people worked out the way that they drive within the mall, had a more, and staff too, we had the idea of having a more comprehensive parking signage program to direct people to various areas of the mall. What the City Council directed at this last one is simply one sign. This sign would, as you make a right out of the main entrance and you're headed south in the parking lot past BJ's, would simply have a sign that points people. There's additional parking in the Target garage as well as the JCPenney's garage, so it's not a huge deal in terms of the number of signs. The reason this is placed on this is because we have a situation where you're taking up parking spaces and you're already below what the legal, even though there may not be demand, still what the legal parking requirement is for this zone. So that is the reason behind this and why this condition is placed there. What the general manager is correct. Even if the farmers market weren't going to happen, this would be a requirement that's placed on this when we eventually do call up the parking exception application for final approval to the City Council meeting, which will happen within the next 3 months or so. So this is something that's going to be on this. This will be a requirement, regardless of the farmers market or no farmers market. However, since this is taking up additional parking spaces, we had to place it within these conditions of approval. Regarding the crosswalk, the reason why the crosswalk requirement is here is simply I believe the council member as well as staff noticed that this would draw extra pedestrian activity to a certain area. That said, we're not dead set on the crosswalk. I think what we could do is, even though that was the City Council's direction and they may end up requiring that, what we're happy to do is sit down with Tanforan as well as our engineering staff to see if there is another way that we could work around, the way that pedestrians get around the mall in a certain area. So what I'd be happy to add there is, or recommend adding there is, a crosswalk or additional pedestrian measure to the satisfaction of the city engineer.
But you're still, I'm sorry, through the chair?
Yes.
But you're still set on the, on number
32.
30 with the additional signage,
Correct.
which we're talking about one sign.
Correct. And this
And
was
the
strong.
gentleman-
This was strong direction for years now, and it's strong direction from the City Council at the City Council meeting where this was heard, and the City Council was making the determination whether or not a use like this was consistent with the mall zoning, and their determination was part of the mall zoning is a parking requirement. Their parking requirement isn't being met at this point. So in order for there to be consistency, directional signage should be put in, pointing people towards the least impacted areas of the mall.
Okay, so, but the general manager of the mall has stated that she was not in receipt of, I guess, the whole entire packet with all of the conditions of approval. That was what I understood, correct? So, I don't really know why not. To me, it doesn't kind of make sense, but it is what it is. She didn't get it, she didn't get it, and it's not good to have to come to a meeting and have something,
Correct.
all of a sudden you're looking at a cost, because it could very well be a cost.
These specific areas, though, have been discussed before. We sent an email with the specific locations circled showing what the conditions. We did the error, though, in the fact that we should have sent the final packet to the property owner as well.
Okay.
And they may have been sent to the property owner and not to the general manager.
Entirely possible. Is there some way that even tonight if we wanted to, in the event that, as it stands right now, let us say that it was, voted down. Or let's say that it's voted in, but it doesn't meet with, the, the mall, what their requirements are. I mean, is there some way to, for a month, continue for the, farmer's market until these issues could be resolved? I mean, or is it end here tonight where it's either gonna be, next Sunday, it's not gonna have a farmer's market, or,
No,
You know what I'm saying?
they actually have an approval for 3 months beginning May 20th with the temporary use permit. So they actually there's a little bit of buffer time in there. We wouldn't yank the temporary use permit. It would just be something that beyond August 20th wouldn't be allowed to operate.
so in reality, we have basically until the beginning of August,
Correct.
really, to try and
Correct.
get this resolved. Okay.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
I'm a little confused. How did the permission for the shopping center to come into existence the way it is now get approved and yet have parking loose and undefined?
The idea was that we were going to do it as a temporary use permit for a short period of time and see how things worked out, and then address the long-standing parking issues as part of the use permit that goes forward for the rest of the year, as well as the parking exception application that would ultimately go to the city council. So the idea was we didn't want to delay the start of the farmers market. We'd let it operate as it is right now, and then for the long-standing one, we'd have placed the conditions of approval in it.
Oh, that's not what I meant. I think that's good that the farmer's market is going on. But it's my understanding there's still parking negotiation going on between the city and the ownership of the mall, independent of the farmer's market. Is that correct?
Correct. I think we're all in agreement that a lower parking requirement can be justified for the site. It's just really the condition of approval related to directional signage is the only thing that's under negotiation.
So that's why my spirit is feeling so beat up.
Yeah. I mean, the other option would be that that you continue this item till the July meeting. There would still be additional time there, and that we work with the mall management in the meantime over those two conditions.
I'd like to make a motion.
Before you do, Perry, I have a couple of questions.
Okay. First, I'd like to say that I listened carefully to what you were saying before. And one of the excerpts of that was, even though there may not be demand. I've been out there in slow times and busy times, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and right now for that matter, and I've never had any trouble finding parking. I might have to walk a little bit, but there's miraculous number of open spaces even on the most busy Christmas shopping day. So I'm having trouble with having to have more parking there. The signage I could see. On the other hand, if I were a betting person, I might bet that 90% of the people who come to that mall know where the parking is. They just don't want to walk from the corner of the penny slot or the Target garage. But there's parking there, and I think they know it. So I'm a little suspicious of how tremendously important more signs are. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
Could I ask the property manager to step up here for a second? Yeah, please. Could you show me which portion of the lot belongs to Sears?
Building line,
All the way out to the street.
second garage, and then shop and hand, same thing. So we own
Is that this? Gotcha.
maybe 2 lanes of traffic.
I was just gonna
Okay.
offer
Okay,
this
thank you.
map. Is this map any better?
No, this is actually a wider map of the
Oh,
entire
okay.
parking lot.
If you were to look at the JCPenney building and the Sears building and take their interior walls as they attach themselves to the main structure of the smaller shops, that's the property line front and back agenda.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank
So, in years past, I've seen like pumpkin patches and stuff in the parking lot. So those would have been, they were done in that Sears section of the parking lot apparently, right?
There are 2 lanes of traffic, see that line?
Yeah,
We have
there's-
2 lanes of traffic here that belong to us. This area here
It's
has
Sears.
been utilized for carnivals.
Right.
You name it, it's been out there. That's been going on for years. That's just a function of specialty leasing as a temporary use permit for the city. We haven't had them.
But
submit
it's
that.
Sears property
That's
though, right?
Sears property. There's
Okay.
reciprocal easement agreements as it relates to the traffic and promotions. So that's.
Would this fall into that?
This, I consider the farmer's market an event. Do I need to be on speaker?
Yeah, that'd be good. Because my thought is, you know, that portion of the parking lot's been used for this type of activity before. It's not ideally located. I mean, in a retail sense, what you've picked out is ideal for congesting people in a retail environment where they can go shopping, they go to the, you know, farmer's market. But we've had that kind of usage on that property before. It's a lot less traffic. There's a lot less vehicle flow. There's more parking over there.
I would be happy to approach Sears. I would be happy to approach JCPenney's, but that will take time, and we didn't
course.
have the luxury of time when this was first presented to us.
Okay.
So we did the best thing, and we put you on our property, and here we sit. This particular project has some specific differences as it relates to other functions that have occurred on these sites. The carnivals, the pumpkin patches, the Christmas tree lot, other proposed uses which shall remain nameless for the time being. But those are tenants. They're paying us rent. We get money. We get commissions. We don't get anything for farmers market.
Okay.
We get the pleasure of being the host, which we enjoy. But we're not making money off this. This is not sales that we generate income from.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, through the chair.
Commissioner?
In an indirect way, though, you may be making money off of it by virtue of the more people that attend the farmer's market. Hopefully, they will then in turn get their goods and then decide, hey, I need a T-shirt or whatever, you know, and go to one of the stores. So there is that indirect, hard to put a figure on. Hopefully, you're making some money off of the farmer's market. Maybe not. It might be very difficult to trace, but probably in all, you know, more than likely, there is a trickle-down theory in effect there, I would think.
You're in a
Excuse me.
regional
Excuse me.
shopping center parking
Excuse
lot.
me. Well, 1 second. Did you want a response to that, or was that a
No,
statement?
no,
Oh, you don't?
no.
Okay.
If she could, if she wants.
Well, there's 2 things. Yes, it is a regional shopping center. It is what it is. It exists, therefore it is. That's its function. However, the parking lot, the hours of the farmer's market only right now only has a 2-hour overlay on Sunday. So, I mean, it's not like we're open the whole time that the farmer's market is there.
Okay. I'd like to bring this discussion to a closure. Is there a motion to go forward, or is there a motion
Through
to
the
continue?
chair. I'd like to move on the basis of what I hear here. I think that it would benefit the motion moving forward in a more permanent way if it were continued. So I move that the commission continue use permit 12-6 to the next planning commission meeting.
Any second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstentions? Seeing none, item is continued to the next planning commission meeting on July, was it 17th? Yep.
Through the chair.
Commissioner?
So that does mean that the farmer's market will be able to continue
Right.
as they're currently operating.
That is correct.
Correct.
At
They're
least
good.
through
They're
that.
good through the mid-August.
That is correct. Thank you. Moving on to discussion, city staff discussion. Can we call the other 2 planning commissioners back in?
Say it again.
Could we call Commissioner
Oh, yeah.
Johnson and Marshall back in? City staff discussion?
Just wanted to give you a development update. Cedar Mills, which is the development of 14 single-family homes by Lennar on the corner of Pepper and Cedar, is doing really well. At last count, they're not all constructed yet, but they've already sold 11 of the 14 homes. And the last few homes they figured were going to sell out within a couple weeks. So, I mean, I think what that just shows is there's a lot of low inventory out there, and developers haven't developed anything in the last 4 years. So when something does come on the market, it's at the point now that things are actually starting to get purchased quickly. Treetops is going along well, still on pace to first occupancy in August and complete the project by June, July of next year. And as I think everyone knows, the rental market is doing really well as well. So they're excited about opening and trying to open as quickly as possible in order to still hit the hotter rental market. That's it.
Thank you.
And then also choosing the next architectural review committee members. Do we have volunteers? Commissioner Samut, Commissioner Peterson, Commissioner Biasotti. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 6B, Planning Commission discussion.
Through the chair.
Commissioner.
Just to make it official, I know I talked to Aaron earlier about the food trucks on El Camino, and maybe the staff can do whatever you do to see the zoning on it and laws on it and regulations on it. I've been asked by a few residents who see why they can do it and other restaurants can't do other things. And so I gave Aaron some paperwork that I looked up, and just maybe you can bring it back. Or I don't even know if it's our jurisdiction, but
yeah, I'll have the city attorney brief the planning commission at the next meeting.
Could you elaborate the question?
Sure. The question is, as you know, there's taco trucks and other mobile food vendors that are located in San Bruno as well as all over the Bay Area now. You know, they've grown in number over the last year or two. The question is how, I think the overall philosophical question is, why are there parking requirements? Why are there certain requirements on brick and mortar restaurants? And why don't those same requirements apply to mobile food vendors? So I think that's question number one. And then question number two, Commissioner Marshall pointed out a specific section of the Streets and Highway Code that would specifically relate to mobile food vendors on the El Camino Real, which is obviously a state highway, and whether or not this language within the state and highway code would conflict with their operations. So I think there's overall questions about which type of codes apply, and then specifically this street and highway code as well.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Commissioner?
Also, I think it's Mike's Auto Sales. I've noticed he's got a couple of signs up on his fence that say if you park anything there that blocks the view of the lot, you will be towed. I think there's a couple of those up, and another one which I think is in the city code about not parking if you have a for sale sign on your vehicle in front of it. But in any case, I think that staff should take a look at that and make sure that it's legit.
We'll look at that custom sign.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. I wanted to point out that we received the Indicators for Sustainable San Mateo County booklet today. And those of you who want to check it out at home, the website is www.sustainablesanmateo.org, and you can get the same package at home as well. Do you want to speak about this? Anything in particular that piques your interest?
I haven't looked over the most recent version of this, but I would do the same as what you recommend. I mean, it's a scorecard that's looking at how are we meeting sustainability measures countywide. I think one thing, and I don't know if this is touched on because I haven't looked at this, is every city is required by law now to do a climate action plan, and a climate action plan is first of the kind document for California, which really takes a look at the whole sustainability umbrella and how our city's doing in water conservation and transit-oriented development and green building measures, and tying all those policies together into one document. So in addition to looking at the sustainability scorecard, I would also recommend soon coming up, the city of San Bruno will be completing our climate action plan, and cities countywide will be as well.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other planning commission discussion? Seeing none, the meeting is adjourned.